Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. At the bar, in the midst of the crowd, Leo Fitzgerald lounged against the counter, his third whiskey of the night dangling precariously from his fingertips. The ice clinked against the glass as he raised it to his lips, savoring the burn as it slid down his throat. Another round, Leo. The bartender's voice barely registered over the din. Why not? It's not like I've got anywhere to be tomorrow. Leo's words slurred slightly, a testament to the drinks already coursing through his system. As the bartender moved to pour, Leo's phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. With a groan, he fished it out, squinting at the bright screen. His father's name glared back at him, accompanied by a terse message. Lunch tomorrow, 1 p.m. Don't be late. Leo's stomach lurched, and it wasn't from the alcohol. Lunches with his father were never casual affairs. They always came with strings attached, expectations that Leo could never seem to meet. He typed out a quick affirmative reply, his fingers fumbling over the keys. Bad news? The bartender slid a fresh drink across the counter. Just dear old Dad summoning me for another lecture. Leo knocked back half the whiskey in one go. Probably wants to remind me what a disappointment I am. The night wore on, a blur of drinks and dancing, Leo desperately trying to forget the impending meeting. As the bar lights flicked on, signaling closing time, he stumbled out into the cool night air. The world spun lazily around him as he hailed a cab, giving the driver the address to his plush downtown apartment. Morning came far too soon, sunlight streaming through the gaps in his curtains and stabbing at his eyes. Leo groaned, his head pounding in rhythm with his heartbeat. He fumbled for his phone, cursing when he saw the time. 12:15 p.m. 45 minutes to get across town and look presentable. No. He scrambled out of bed, nearly face-planting as his feet tangled in the sheets. A quick shower, some mouthwash, and a handful of aspirin later, Leo was out the door. He flagged down a taxi, bouncing his knee nervously as they wove through the midday traffic. They pulled up to the restaurant with 2 minutes to spare. Leo smoothed down his rumpled shirt, wishing he'd had time to iron it, and stepped inside. The maitre d' led him to a secluded table in the back, where Richard Fitzgerald sat waiting, his expression unreadable. You're late. Richard didn't look up from his menu. Leo checked his watch. It's 1:01. Which means you're late. Richard finally met his son's eyes, his gaze sharp and assessing. Sit down. Leo slid into the chair across from his father, resisting the urge to fidget under that penetrating stare. A waiter materialized at their table, pouring water and reciting the day's specials. Leo ordered a coffee, desperate for some caffeine to clear the fog from his brain. I assume you're wondering why I asked you here? Richard folded his hands on the table, his signet ring glinting in the soft light. The thought had crossed my mind. Leo took a sip of water, wishing it was something stronger. It's time for you to join the family business. Leo choked, coughing and spluttering. I'm sorry. What? You heard me? Richard's tone brooked no argument. You're 28 years old, Leo. It's time you started acting like it. I've indulged your lifestyle for far too long. My lifestyle? Leo's voice rose, drawing curious glances from nearby diners. He lowered it to a harsh whisper. You mean existing? Living my life? I mean wasting your potential. Richard's words were clipped, precise. You have a degree from Harvard Business School, yet you spend your days drinking and your nights. Well, I'd rather not know what you do with your nights. Leo opened his mouth to protest, but Richard held up a hand, silencing him. This isn't a request, Leo. It's time for you to step up and take your place in the company. I'm not getting any younger, and I need to know the business will be in capable hands when I retire. The waiter returned with Leo's coffee, and he grabbed it like a lifeline, taking a long swallow and wincing as it scalded his tongue. His mind raced, searching for a way out of this ultimatum. Dad, I appreciate the offer, but it's not an offer. Richard's voice was steel. It's what's going to happen. You start on Monday. Leo slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. He knew that tone. There was no arguing with his father when he used it. Fine. What exactly will I be doing? A ghost of a smile crossed Richard's face. You'll start at the bottom, of course. Learn the business from the ground up. I've arranged for you to spend time in each department, starting with product development. Leo nodded numbly, his mind already drifting to how this would impact his social life. No more all-night benders, no more lazy days spent recovering on his couch. A spark of determination kindled in his chest. Maybe this was the push he needed, a chance to prove to his father and to himself that he wasn't just a wastrel. All right, Dad, I'll do it. I'll make you proud. Richard's expression softened just a fraction. That's all I've ever wanted, son. The rest of the lunch passed in a blur of logistics and expectations. By the time Leo left the restaurant, his head was spinning with information about start dates, dress codes, and departmental rotations. He walked aimlessly through the city streets, trying to process the seismic shift in his life. Monday morning arrived with alarming speed. Leo stood in front of his closet, staring at the array of designer suits he'd barely worn. He selected a charcoal gray ensemble, pairing it with a crisp white shirt and a deep blue tie. As he knotted the tie, he caught his reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at him looked different, more serious, more like his father. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Leo arrived at Fitzgerald Enterprises 10 minutes early, his stomach a knot of nerves. The receptionist directed him to the Human Resources Department, where he spent the morning filling out paperwork and sitting through orientation videos. By lunchtime, his hand was cramping from signing documents, and his brain was overflowing with information about company policies and procedures. As he made his way to the cafeteria, a hand clapped him on the shoulder. He turned to find his father standing there, a proud smile on his face. "How's the first day going, son?" Leo forced a smile. "Great, Dad. Just great." "Excellent. I've got a meeting, but I wanted to check in. Remember, you're starting in product development this afternoon. Pay attention. It's the heart of our business." With another pat on the shoulder, Richard was gone, leaving Leo to ponder what exactly product development entailed in a company he knew surprisingly little about. After a quick lunch, Leo made his way to the product development floor. He was greeted by a bubbly woman with curly red hair and thick-rimmed glasses. "You must be Leo. I'm Maggie, head of product development. We're so excited to have you join us." Leo shook her hand, trying to match her enthusiasm. "Thanks, Maggie. I'm looking forward to learning the ropes." Maggie beamed. "Oh, you're going to love it. Come on, I'll give you the tour." As they walked through the department, Leo's confusion grew. The walls were lined with sketches and fabric swatches, and every desk seemed to be covered in lace and silk samples. Maggie?" Leo interrupted her cheerful monologue about textile suppliers. "What exactly does Fitzgerald Enterprises make?" Maggie stopped short, her eyes widening. "Oh my goodness, didn't anyone tell you? We're one of the leading designers and manufacturers of women's lingerie and sleepwear in the country." Leo felt the blood drain from his face. Lingerie, his father's company, the business he was supposed to take over someday, made women's underwear? Maggie, oblivious to Leo's shock, continued her tour. "Over here is where we develop new patterns, and this is our prototype area where we test out new designs." Leo's eyes fell on a mannequin wearing a lacy black bra and matching panties. He quickly looked away, his cheeks burning. "And here's where you'll be working." Maggie gestured to a small desk in the corner. "We thought it would be best for you to start with some market research, get a feel for what our customers want." Leo nodded weakly, sinking into the chair. Maggie placed a stack of fashion magazines and competitor catalogs on his desk. "Just start going through these, making notes on current trends, popular styles, that sort of thing. Let me know if you have any questions." With a cheery wave, she was gone, leaving Leo alone with a mountain of lingerie catalogs. He picked one up gingerly, as if it might bite him. Opening it, he was confronted with page after page of scantily clad models in various states of undress. This was not how he'd imagined his foray into the family business. Days turned into weeks, and Leo found himself slowly adjusting to his new role. He threw himself into the work, determined to prove to his father that he could handle the responsibility. He pored over market reports, attended design meetings, and even started to develop an eye for which styles would be popular. But something was off. The more time he spent surrounded by delicate lace and satin, the more curious he became. He found himself running his fingers over the fabric samples, marveling at their softness. During fittings, he paid close attention to how the garments moved and stretched, imagining how they would feel against skin. One late night, after everyone else had gone home, Leo found himself alone in the prototype room. His eyes fell on a new design, a pale pink baby doll nightgown with delicate lace trim. Before he could talk himself out of it, he grabbed the garment and ducked into a changing room. Heart pounding, he slipped off his suit and shirt. The silk was cool against his skin as he pulled the nightgown over his head. It settled around him like a whisper, clinging to his chest and floating around his thighs. Leo turned to face the mirror and gasped. The man staring back at him was transformed. The soft fabric smoothed out his angles, giving him a curvier silhouette. The pale pink complemented his skin tone, making him look softer, more delicate. For the first time in his life, Leo felt pretty. He twirled, watching the nightgown flare out around him. A giggle escaped his lips, surprising him. He clapped a hand over his mouth, but couldn't stop the giddy feeling bubbling up in his chest. It was wrong. He knew it was wrong. But it felt so right. From that night on, Leo's perspective shifted. He threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, but now it was personal. He volunteered to test prototypes, claiming it was to better understand the product. In reality, it was an excuse to feel the silky fabrics against his skin, to experience the thrill of wearing something so feminine. At home, he began ordering pieces from the company's catalog, telling himself it was for research. His closet slowly filled with lacy bras, silky panties, and flowing nightgowns. Each night, he would lock his apartment door, draw the curtains, and indulge in his secret passion. He started small, a pair of panties under his suit, a camisole beneath his dress shirt. The knowledge of what he wore underneath gave him a secret thrill, a confidence he'd never felt before. In meetings, he found himself sitting differently, moving with a grace he'd never possessed. Weeks turned into months, and Leo's transformation continued. He started taking better care of himself, moisturizing, getting manicures, even dabbling in clear nail polish. He grew out his hair, telling colleagues it was for charity. In reality, he loved the way it felt brushing against his shoulders, how it softened his features. His colleagues noticed the change. Comments about how he seemed happier, more confident, more engaged in his work. His father beamed with pride at board meetings, praising Leo's dedication and innovative ideas. If only they knew the truth. One Saturday night, nearly 6 months into his new role, Leo stood in front of his full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the person staring back at him. Gone was the scruffy, directionless young man who'd stumbled into that first day at work. In his place stood someone softer, more refined. Leo smoothed his hands down the satin slip dress he wore. A long, honey-blonde wig cascaded over his shoulders, framing a face expertly made up with subtle contouring and a swipe of rose gold lipstick. He'd never felt more alive, more himself. A ping from his phone broke the spell, a text from his father. "Quarterly review on Monday. Bring your A-game." Reality came crashing back. This was supposed to be temporary, a way to understand the business better. But somewhere along the line, it had become so much more. Leo sank onto his bed, the satin of his dress whispering against the sheets. He couldn't keep living this double life. Something had to give. But how could he possibly explain this to his father, to his colleagues, to the world? As the sun rose on Monday morning, Leo made a decision. He couldn't hide anymore. It was time to be true to himself, whatever the consequences. He dressed with care, choosing a conservative but feminine blouse and pencil skirt. He applied his makeup with a steady hand, years of practice evident in every brushstroke. The wig was styled into a sleek bob, professional yet unmistakably feminine. Heart pounding, he stepped into the office. Heads turned as he walked to the conference room, whispers following in his wake. He kept his chin high, refusing to let their stares shake his resolve. His father was already seated at the head of the table when Leo entered. Richard's eyes widened, his mouth falling open in shock. "Leo, what is this?" Leo took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders.
"This is me, Dad. The real me. I know it's not what you expected, but I hope you can understand. Working here, surrounded by all this beauty and femininity, it awakened something in me. Something that's always been there, just waiting to be discovered."
The room fell silent, all eyes darting between Leo and his father. Richard's face cycled through a range of emotions: shock, confusion, anger, and finally, acceptance? I don't understand," Richard said slowly. "But I can see how much happier you are, how much more confident.
Is this why you've been doing so well here?"
Leo nodded, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes.
"It is. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm being true to myself.
And that's reflected in my work." Richard stood, walking around the table to stand in front of his child. He reached out, hesitating for a moment before pulling Leo into a tight hug. "I may not understand," he whispered, "but I love you, no matter what." As they broke apart, both wiping away tears, Richard turned to address the stunned room. "Well, we have a quarterly review to conduct, don't we? Leo, why don't you start us off with your report on the new spring line?" Leo beamed, pulling out his presentation materials. As he began to speak, his voice strong and clear, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where he could finally be his authentic self, both in life and in business. The quarterly review proceeded smoothly, with Leo's presentation receiving enthusiastic responses from the board. His intimate understanding of the product line and target demographic shone through, impressing even the most skeptical executives. As the meeting adjourned, Richard pulled Leo aside.
"I'm proud of you,"
he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Not just for your work, but for your courage. I can't pretend I understand everything, but I want to learn." Leo nodded, blinking back tears. "Thanks, Dad. That means more than you know." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments and conversations. HR scrambled to update policies, ensuring a safe and inclusive environment. Some colleagues were supportive, others confused, but most simply shrugged and carried on with business as usual. Leo threw himself into his work with renewed vigor. His unique perspective as both designer and wearer of the products led to innovative ideas that pushed the company in exciting new directions. He spearheaded a campaign for more inclusive sizing and styles, expanding their customer base and earning praise from fashion critics. One crisp autumn morning, Leo stood before a full-length mirror in his office, admiring the prototype of their latest design, a silky chemise with delicate lace panels. The door opened and Richard walked in, pausing as he took in the scene. "It suits you," he said after a moment. Leo turned, a nervous smile playing on his lips.
"You think so?"
Richard nodded, moving to stand beside his child.
"I do. And not just the nightgown. All of this.
You seem more yourself than I've ever seen you." "I feel more like myself," Leo admitted. "I know it's not what you imagined for me."
"What I imagined doesn't matter,"
Richard interrupted.
"What matters is that you're happy and successful. You've breathed new life into this company, Leo. I couldn't be prouder."
Impulsively, Leo hugged his father. "Thank you," he whispered. As they broke apart, Richard cleared his throat.
"Now, about this new line you've been working on.
Talk me through your vision." Leo's eyes lit up as he launched into an explanation of his plans for a gender-neutral collection. Richard listened attentively, asking questions and offering suggestions. For the first time, they were truly working together as equals. Months passed, and Fitzgerald Enterprises flourished under their combined leadership. Leo's story, carefully managed by the PR team, became a beacon of hope for many. Letters poured in from people who saw themselves reflected in Leo's journey, thanking the company for its inclusivity. On the anniversary of Leo's coming out at work, the entire office gathered for a celebration. As Leo stood to give a speech, he caught sight of his reflection in a nearby window. The person staring back at him was confident, radiant, and utterly at peace. "A year ago, I stood before you all, terrified but determined to live my truth," Leo began. "Your acceptance and support have meant the world to me. But more than that, this journey has taught me the power of authenticity, in business and in life." He raised a glass, smiling at the sea of faces before him. "To being true to ourselves, and to creating a world where everyone feels beautiful and empowered." As the room erupted in cheers and applause, Leo felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see his father, eyes shining with pride. "You've done good, kid," Richard said softly. "You've done real good." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.